I'll be speaking with Cheryl Zur of the Ukraine Socialist Solidarity Campaign. She's a former president of the union AFSCME Local 444 in Oakland, California. She's a retired industrial electrician. She worked for the East Bay Utility District. With all the coverage of the Hamas attack and the Israeli bombing of Gaza, Ukraine has taken a back seat, but we'll be talking about Ukraine, commenting about an event we oppose that will be taking place in 2 days on Wednesday in Santa Barbara, California. And if people are seeing this later, we're talking about 18th of October, 2023. The event is a peace award to economist Jeffrey Sachs. The award's coming from the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. We're also going to touch on a statement that the Ukraine Socialist Solidarity Campaign is preparing about Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, a statement he made supporting Israel. Good afternoon, Cheryl.
Hi, nice to see you.
So who is Jeffrey Sachs?
Jeffrey Sachs is a well-known academic and economist who I think that he first rose to prominence after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, when he was called upon and probably received a good salary for consulting with what the structure of the Soviet Union should be economically. And different people have different opinions about how successful that was, but that was how he rose to prominence as a progressive. And he's gone on since then to comment and consult on many things, including Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Russia, I mean, his plan was shock therapy, a quick run to the free-for-all of laissez-faire or neoliberal capitalism.
Yeah, it's actually kind of confounding to me why he continues to have a progressive reputation amongst the left. He appears frequently on Democracy Now!, and he also has had many commentaries that have been published on Common Dreams, as if he is someone to look to for answers for progressive.
Well, he kind of reinvented himself as an anti-poverty expert, and he came up with a brilliant idea to end poverty, just throw a lot of money all of a sudden at the poor countries. And that hasn't happened, but somehow he has this reputation. So,
yeah.
So here the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation gives him a peace award. And there's a problem. There's many problems, but he's been on a TV program of a Russian talk show host, let's call him, Solovyov. And what's the problem there?
Well, Solovyov has called for the wiping of Ukraine off the face of the earth with nuclear arms. And that is no laughing matter. And I don't think it's a laughing matter for Solovyov either. I think he actually means it. If you take the time to watch those videos, it's clear he's very serious about it. And in these 3 different interviews with Jeffrey Sachs sitting there just kind of, yeah, he doesn't say, yes, that's a great idea. But he doesn't say that is absolutely the most barbaric thing I have ever heard in my life. And I strongly disagree with you. He does not say that. So in what way is that consistent with someone who stands for peace? It's completely inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't say it on the exact same show as Sachs, but he said it, 3 or 4 times. It was well publicized. In fact, a whole bunch of economists in the end of the winter, I think, of this year, wrote a letter to Sachs pointing this out to him. And by a whole bunch, I don't mean 5 or 10. I mean, it's like 200. And among other things, said he is calling for nuclear attacks. And he made another one, I believe it was just August. So just a couple months ago, another demand for a nuclear attack. And the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, whose whole reason for existence is to oppose nuclear war, is going to give this man a peace award. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it is bizarre. Yeah, that letter of March of 2023 by a very large group of Sachs peers was really important, and it was led and originally drafted by Ukrainian economists at UC Berkeley, actually. And they not only pointed out his appearances on Solovyov's program, but they also, refuted they accused Sachs of being a Putin apologist and propagandist because he simply recites Putin's talking points about the war in Ukraine without any facts. And they disputed those facts one by one in that open letter. And I don't know if Sachs ever had to respond to it. And I would think that the leadership of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation would take a letter like that very seriously. But either they missed it or they ignored it when they decided to invite him and give him this award as a distinguished peace leader, which is why we decided that it was necessary to respond with a call on the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation to withdraw this award to Sachs.
And we at Promoting Enduring Peace sent them a letter to the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. We had worked not closely really, but we saw some of the things they were doing and we publicized it and never got a response. So the open letter, could you describe the open letter that you created?
Yeah, the open letter has a link in it to the original letter by The Economist, which is excellent. But it also updates some of Sachs's statements about Ukraine. And it was signed by a number of really well-known people, not only scientists who have been involved in trying to expose Russia's very dangerous role at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and calling for a demilitarized zone, people like that who are in the scientific community, but also economists, writers, intellectuals like Barbara Smith, who's a well-known African-American feminist, Dennis Bondar, who's a Ukrainian nuclear physicist at Tulane University, Adam Hochschild, who's a well-known, excellent writer of history and is well-known amongst the left. So we're really proud of the international response that we've gotten to this letter. As of this moment, it has about 257 signatures on it, and it continues to gather signatures.
So at one point you let the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation know about this, and what's been their response?
Zero response. We sent the letter to them after it had received about 200 signatures, something like that. And we've also sent out a press release. Well, you sent out a press release that has been distributed to the local newspapers in Santa Barbara. The main independent newspaper in Santa Barbara is the Santa Barbara Independent. And they have been promoting this event on Wednesday uncritically. They bill themselves as a progressive newspaper, and yet they've also not responded to any of our letters to the editor, at the very least asking them to provide us with equal time to share a critical view of Sachs and the presenting of this award.
Mm-hmm. Very strange, very strange. And, the left has sort of mostly let this thing go by as they have on a lot of Ukraine issues. Now, leaving aside the whole irony or hypocrisy in giving an award to from an anti-nuclear group to a guy who appears on a program with a guy who calls for nuclear strikes. I mean, some of the things that Sachs has been saying, I mean, the day before the invasion in 2022, just the day before, he already says the problem now, and of course Russia will never invade, but the problem now is all the fault of the US because it's expanding NATO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that anybody that chooses to look at the facts knows that is simply not true. And that the countries, whatever people think about NATO as an organization, that Russia's long history, well, in the Soviet Union for that matter too, but Russia's history alone of invading its neighboring countries under false pretenses, well, with no total violation of international law, is well known. So the people in those countries had every right to join NATO, to be protected. That's a fact. But the fact is also that very little of Russia's actual border is surrounded by NATO countries. It's a very small percentage of their border. They're not in any danger. And Putin has actually said as much. If anybody is interested again in the facts and the actual history and what Putin himself has said, he's made it very clear that the reason for his invading Ukraine has to do with expanding the Russian Empire and his desire to commit cultural genocide against the Ukrainian people. They're not Ukrainians. They don't exist. The nation of Ukraine does not exist in Putin's mind. So for a man who is supposedly as intelligent as Sachs to act as if he doesn't know that is, well, shocking and wrong, unacceptable.
And then after this 2022 invasion, he writes in Tikkun, he says, the war was, quote, a 30-year project of the American neoconservative movement, unquote. Wow, a 30-year plot.
Yeah, it's a deep conspiracy of the deep state, I guess. Well, yeah, that's, again, factually untrue. I mean, the people that, I mean, the United States, I think, wishes that in Russia had never invaded Ukraine in the first place. They certainly, had no interest in going, having to support Ukraine military or anything else.
They wanted to pivot to China.
Yeah, exactly. And Ukraine has really gotten in the way. And now with Israel invading Gaza, things aren't going well for them, for the Biden administration. Another one of those broad statements by Sachs for which he provides no evidence. And I guess nobody requires him to. No evidence, just like, well.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre that he's so popular on the sort of liberal left, and then, Bloomberg and all these other, serious establishment media and so on. I mean, I've seen it so many times, and it's infuriating to keep yelling at the TV, but he'll never talk about the Budapest Memorandum of 1994 and what that was about. Would you want to comment?
Yeah, sure. Well, the Budapest Memorandum isn't talked about that much. It should be talked about a lot more. And that is where Ukraine was required to give up its nuclear weapons, right? Was that? Yes, exactly. Yeah. And Ukraine deeply regrets agreeing to that because it was a contract, if you will. It was an agreement that they would be granted complete sovereignty and that it would be backed up by it was agreed by the United States, Russia, and Ukraine.
And Britain too.
And Britain, yeah, that their territorial sovereignty would be respected. In exchange for that, they gave up their nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And
it was the borders that they had since 1954, which included Crimea.
Right. And both of that entire agreement has been completely violated by Russia, first by its invasion and occupation of Crimea, and now, of course, by its invasion of Ukraine as a whole. And yet, apparently, the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, which is aware of the Budapest agreements, they just ignoring it. I mean, if you are an organization that claims to be opposed to the use of nuclear weapons, how can you? It's
sorry about that.
So yes, exactly. So Sachs is also completely just ignores that.
Yeah, and just you say the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation is aware of it. They even made a statement, and they referenced.
Yeah.
They referenced the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I guess the open letter to them talks about that. They certainly have been told about that. Look at your own your own declaration.
Yeah, this is one of the confounding things of the times that we're living in, that, people apparently feel no requirement or responsibility when it comes to very serious matters of life and death and war and nuclear arms to be consistent historically in what they say and what they do. And they also apparently don't care about facts. Consistency is not required, and neither are facts. Otherwise, you could not possibly present an award to someone like Jeffrey Sachs, calling him a distinguished peace leader. Not possible if you look at the facts and you're consistent in your principles regarding nuclear arms and peace. Just doesn't add up.
Absolutely. Well, we also said we were going to talk about another issue. President Zelensky's huge support for Israel, not only in this latest warfare, but even before. And if you could just touch on that a little bit.
Sure. In August of 2022, I believe it was Zelensky's, one of his ambassadors or someone representing the state, sent out a tweet, and maybe even wrote an article expressing their support for Israel's preemptive attacks on Gaza. And we thought that's astounding, given that Ukraine was the victim of an aggressive invasion. How could they possibly support the same action in a different country towards different people? So we wrote an open letter at that time criticizing Zelensky and his government for that kind of support for Israel. So that was in August of 2022. But now with the most recent genocidal attacks that Israel is responding to after Hamas's committing of war crimes as well in Israel, but on a smaller basis, that Zelensky has again called for unconditional or uncritical support of Israel. He's turned history on its head because the Palestinian people and the Ukrainian people have everything in common. And the Ukrainians have nothing in common with the Israeli government, which is very similar to, who is Netanyahu? Netanyahu and Putin have much in common in terms of being extreme right-wing authoritarian leaders, also white supremacists. So that was very disturbing.
During one of his campaigns, Netanyahu had like 100 or 200-foot banners showing him shaking hands with Putin. This was not in the last campaign, but I think 21. Wow.
It's another example of no need to be consistent on Zelensky's part. And so we are in the process of writing up a statement that will condemn Zelensky for his uncritical support of the genocidal policies of Israel towards the Palestinians, as well as addressing the situation in general, and our solidarity with the Palestinian people who have been suffering for 75 years. And again, our unequivocal solidarity with the Ukrainians.